I thought my son had taken me out for a quiet drink. I didn't think I would be the one fleeing down an alley at 70. The bartender. He leaned over, grabbed my wrist, so the whole bar could see. He whispered, "He's not on a call. He's with someone who doesn't do favors." My heart stopped. "Check you're subscribed, because you'll want to hear how this ends." The glass in front of me had never been touched. My son stood up and walked out like it was ordinary. He said, "Work," and left me there like a broken prop. The pub smelled of cologne and danger, not home. The man at the bar, young, steady-eyed, said one sentence that made every small thing Ethan had said that week snap into place. "They're talking about selling your house." That was when I left through a bathroom window. For a man my age, every joint screamed. But something else moved through me. Not fear. Not yet. Cold clarity. And if you think this is just a family argument, wait. Because what I found next changed everything. I didn't run far. I didn't have the knees for it. But I stood in that alley behind the lantern room, with the cold air filling my lungs, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. My own heartbeat fighting to be heard. 70 isn't young, but it isn't dead either. And the thought of losing the last real thing I had left, that lit a different kind of fire inside me. The street lamps flickered along the iced-over brickwork, and I leaned against the wall, steadying myself. It was strange what the mind does in moments like that. My thoughts didn't jump to danger, or paperwork, or betrayal. They went straight to Helen, my wife. Gone 2 years now. I could almost hear her humming as she sanded the edge of a drawer, smell the lemon oil she used on our kitchen table. She had always been the calm in every storm. And in the middle of that cold alley, for one brief moment, it felt like she was there again, whispering, "Michael, pay attention." When Ethan had invited me to stay with him and Claire for a week, I honestly thought he missed me. It had been months since he'd driven out to Cedar Grove, and his calls had grown quick, efficient, trimmed down to the bare minimum. I blamed it on work. I blamed a lot of things on work. That's what fathers do when they're trying not to see what's in front of them. Their house felt nothing like mine. Everything gleamed white marble, stainless steel, black leather, all surfaces slick enough to skate on. No laughter, no warmth, not a single photo except the ones Claire posted online. She was always filming something. A salad, her morning tea, a yoga pose staged near the window. Authenticity, she called it, though nothing about their life felt real to me. They talked about retreats and sponsored content and elevated spaces. Helen would have rolled her eyes so hard she'd need a neck brace. Still, I tried. I tried to belong in their world for a week. The first night, I sat at their impossibly tall kitchen island, while Claire arranged a salad like she was about to auction it. Ethan poured me wine I didn't want, and patted my shoulder like I was a guest, not his father. And when he asked me to tell Claire the story about my old workshop, the one I built from scraps, piece by stubborn piece, I felt a little warmth in my chest. Until he interrupted. "What Dad means," he said with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes, "is that he presented a solid business plan and secured early investment. He just likes to sound humble." I stared at him, unsure if I'd misheard. That wasn't my life. I'd never had investors. I'd had blisters. I'd had Helen handing me coffee at 2 in the morning while rain leaked through the roof we hadn't finished yet. I'd had neighbors bringing sandwiches, friends lending tools. Not this clean, glossy version he fed to Claire like it was the truth. Something cracked quietly in me that night. Barely a line. But it was the start. 2 days later, he placed a thick stack of papers in front of me. "Retirement options," he said. "A portfolio. Security." The words came out smooth. Memorized. Too smooth. I looked at the page's tiny print. Terms I didn't know. Numbers that looked like they'd been dragged out of thin air. When I told him I needed time to read them, something flickered in his eyes. Gone as fast as it appeared. "Dad," he sighed. "I already read it for you. Don't overthink this. It's good for you." That was the moment the quiet turned heavy. Thick. Like the whole house was holding its breath. And then the small things began. My glasses went missing, then turned up in the fridge. My keys moved to a bowl I never used. Claire walked past me with a softened voice I'd only ever heard nurses use. "Rough morning, Michael?" she whispered once, her phone subtly angled as if she were filming. The captions came next. I saw them only because a neighbor from Cedar Grove sent me a screenshot. Some days are harder than others, Claire wrote over a picture of me staring out their window. Caring for aging parents isn't easy, but we do it with love. Love. The word nearly made me choke. I knew what they were doing. They were building a story. One where I was confused, fading, unreliable. One where my signature could be questioned, or guided. I pushed back. Not loudly. Not angrily. At my age, silence can be a weapon if you know how to hold it. I simply asked Ethan the same question twice. Pretended to forget where the coffee filters were. Stared at the wall a second too long. I let them believe what they wanted to believe. And the more they believed it, the more careless they became. Ethan spoke on the phone with the door half closed. His voice low, tight. He'll sign. Just give me time. Claire rehearsed her lines for videos in the living room. When you love someone through memory loss, you learn patience. My hands trembled, not from age, but from the effort of staying quiet. My mind felt sharper than it had in years. Helen used to say, if you want to know the truth, stop talking. Let others fill the silence. And they did. The night after the bartender warned me, back in that sterile house, I lay awake listening to the furnace click on and off. I stared at the ceiling, and knew with absolute certainty, if I didn't act, everything Helen and I built would disappear into someone else's debts. I thought of the way Ethan had looked at me. Not with malice, but with something worse, entitlement. A belief that because I was old, my story no longer belonged to me. And I remembered Helen's voice again. That last quiet conversation before she passed. If he ever gets lost, Michael. If pride ever takes him too far. Check under our bed. I had dismissed it then. I couldn't dismiss it now. I got out of bed. Slow, but steady. The house was silent. My knees cracked. My back ached. But none of that mattered. I wasn't confused. I wasn't fading. I was a man who had something still worth protecting. I whispered into the dark, almost like a prayer. Helen, guide me. Then I opened the guest room door and stepped into the hallway. The whole world narrowing into a single thought. If they wanted a confused old man, I'd give them one. But I'd use their own story to expose the truth they were trying so hard to bury. I woke before the sun the next morning, though I pretended I didn't. I stayed in bed long enough to hear Claire's footsteps drift past my door, light and careful, the way someone checks on a fragile object they're afraid might break at the wrong time. She paused. I could almost feel her listening. I let out a soft rustle of blankets, a small sigh that sounded weary enough to satisfy her. Only when she moved on did I open my eyes fully. My mind was clear, too clear. It reminded me of the mornings I used to start work before dawn, when Helen would hand me a thermos of coffee and say, "Go on, Michael, do something that matters today." I had no workshop here, no tools, but I had something sharper than any chisel. I had purpose, and purpose, I learned long ago, cuts deeper than steel. I shuffled into the kitchen slowly, letting my steps drag against the polished floor. Claire turned from the stove, with a smile too bright, too staged. "Morning, Michael. Sleep all right?" Her voice had that sweetness people use when they're about to tuck you into a corner. She set a bowl of oatmeal in front of me, plain, bland. The kind people serve someone they want to keep calm and compliant. I thanked her softly. I even forced a tremble into my hand as I lifted the spoon. Ethan walked in moments later, already in a crisp shirt, tie perfectly straight. He always dressed like the world might be taking his photograph. "Dad," he said warmly, "big day for you. We'll review the documents again after breakfast, okay?" The way he emphasized we made something twist inside me. I nodded as if relieved to have someone handling things. His smile widened. He thought he had me. He didn't see my eyes flick toward the junk drawer when Claire bent to refill her mug. Last night, when the house had settled, I noticed something, one drawer slightly misaligned, just a millimeter off. Chaos hides under order. Always. This morning, when Ethan went upstairs to grab his briefcase and Claire stepped into her office to set up her ring light, I drifted toward the drawer like I'd forgotten what I was looking for. I hadn't forgotten. Inside were rubber bands, old chargers, a half-used pack of batteries, and a stack of envelopes bound with a thick elastic. Final notice. Past due. Immediate payment required. My breath caught. Not from shock, I expected this now, but from the weight of confirmation. They were drowning and planning to drag me under. I pulled one envelope just far enough to see the numbers, then shoved it back in place as fast as a guilty man hides contraband. Footsteps. Claire. I shut the drawer with a shaky hand and turned toward the fridge, muttering, "Where do you keep the cream?" She smiled sympathetically, hand landing on my shoulder in a way that made my skin crawl. "It's okay, Michael. Happens to the best of us." I walked away, carrying her pity like a disguise. And behind that disguise, something inside me hardened. Later that morning, while Ethan made a show of taking important conference calls in his office, I wandered into the living room. Claire had left her handbag on the couch. It looked expensive, some European brand she bragged about. I picked it up. Too light. Too thin. Plastic dressed up as prestige. Fake. Just like the watch Ethan left beside the television. A glossy silver thing, missing the weight of real craftsmanship. I rolled it in my palm, feeling the hollow insult of it. Everything about them, I whispered to myself, is made to fool the eye. And then I heard something through the cracked office door. Ethan's voice, sharp, impatient. "No, he's close. He's slipping. He'll sign it soon." I said, "I'm handling it. Just give me time." My heart thudded once. A single heavy knock in my chest. Then I let my face fall slack, as if I hadn't understood a word. Ethan stepped out, surprised to see me near the door. I blinked at him, confused. "Did you need me, son?" His expression softened instantly, the predator vanishing behind concern. "No, Dad. It's all right. Go watch your show." I nodded and shuffled away. My act was working too well. That afternoon, when Ethan left to meet a client, and Claire locked herself in her recording room to talk about wellness routines, I finally pulled out the most dangerous tool in their house. The old tablet Ethan had given me for Christmas. It still had a camera. It still worked. And Rosa Martinez still answered on the second ring. Her voice was sharp, steady, exactly what I needed. "Michael, do you have the documents?" "Yes," I whispered, crouched in the guest room like a schoolboy hiding contraband. "They're thick, and I don't understand half of it." "Then listen closely," she said. "Take a picture of each page, every corner, every signature line. Don't skip a single one." My hands weren't steady anymore from age alone, but steadiness returned when the cause demanded it. One by one, under the warm lamplight, I photographed the pages. "Transmission complete," the tablet said. Rosa called back 10 minutes later. "Michael," she said slowly, "this isn't a retirement portfolio. This isn't even close. And," I waited, "this is a quitclaim deed. If you sign this, you give your house away. No recourse, no protection. This is elder financial abuse." I closed my eyes, not because I was shocked, but because truth always lands differently when it comes from someone else's mouth. Hearing it made it real. When I stepped back into the living room that evening, Ethan and Claire were laughing carefree, rehearsed. Their world was so bright, so shallow, it made my chest hurt. They were performing normality, unaware the curtain had already begun to fall. After dinner, Claire posted another photo of me sitting alone near the window, looking tired. She captioned it, "Cherishing every lucid moment." I stared at the screen, at my own face, made into proof of a lie. At the comments praising her strength, something icy spilled through me. It didn't freeze me. It sharpened me. I looked at Ethan, at the son I raised with my own 2 hands. And I made a choice. If they wanted to treat me like a man losing his mind, I'd let them. But I would use that role. Bend it. Shape it. Hold it like a blade. And when the truth surfaced, it would cut clean through every lie they built. Night changes a house. When the lights drop and the voices fade, a home either softens or shows its bones. Ethan's house never softened. It felt colder after dark, as if the walls were made to echo nothing but their own emptiness. I waited until I heard their bedroom door shut, then waited longer, long enough for the furnace to cycle twice, long enough for Claire's white noise machine to kick in. Time moves differently when you're pretending to be confused. You become invisible, unthreatening. A ghost, allowed to walk the halls. I slid out of bed and picked up the tablet. It felt heavier than it should have, like the weight of the truth inside it had settled into the frame. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They hadn't shaken since Rosa said the words, elder financial abuse. Sometimes clarity steadies you more than fear ever could. I stepped into the hallway, quiet as I could manage, and slipped into the guest bathroom. I shut the door without a sound, sat on the edge of the tub, and opened the tablet. The glow lit up the small tiled room, making the shadows climb the walls like they were listening. Maybe they were. I typed Ethan's name into the search bar, followed by the words I overheard earlier: loan, complaint, Titan Holdings. For a while, nothing. Just glossy photos, corporate promises, Ethan smiling with people who had no idea what stood behind that smile. But I'm a carpenter. I've spent a lifetime finding cracks no one else sees. You push a little harder, and suddenly the whole structure gives way. Around page 3 of the search results, I found something. A forum thread titled, Warning, Carter Wealth plus Titan. My stomach tightened. I opened it. A retired teacher in Nova Scotia wrote about losing every dollar of her pension after Ethan talked her into a low-risk tech fund. A widow from Regina wrote about the same. A truck driver from Windsor. Their words were raw anger, shame, fear. The kind of fear that doesn't leave your voice even when you type it out. I read until my eyes burned. And then I saw it. A user had posted an email screenshot Ethan's name, his company signature, and the phrase, "We guarantee recovery through Titan Holdings." A promise made with confidence he didn't own. Titan Holdings. I whispered the name to myself, letting it settle. It sounded like a cage. Then came the blow I didn't expect. A short video clip, 15, maybe 16 seconds. Shaky camera quality, but clear enough. Ethan stepping out of a glass building, talking to a man who could have been sculpted from the night itself. Sharp suit, cold jawline, eyes like someone who sees weakness the way a hawk sees movement in a field. I didn't need the caption to know. Victor Shaw, the man the bartender had been afraid of. I rewound the video. Again. Each time, something inside my chest tightened. Not heartbreak, no. That had come weeks ago. Quietly. Silently. Without anyone noticing. This was betrayal, turning into revelation. I set the tablet down and looked at my hands. 70 years. These hands had built homes, cradled Helen, held Ethan the day he was born. And here they were, shaking not from age but from the truth they'd just uncovered. I whispered into the dark, "Why, Ethan? Why didn't you come to me first?" There was no answer but the hum of the vent. Eventually I left the bathroom and crept downstairs. I knew Claire sometimes kept late-night snacks in the fridge, fancy yogurts, imported berries, and I used that as my disguise. I opened the fridge door, letting the light spill across the kitchen, and pretended to search for something to eat. Instead, I checked the calendar, pinned beside the coffee machine. Aspen trip, branded retreat, partnership photo shoot. None of it made sense until it did. They weren't planning a future. They were running from a present, collapsing under its own lies. I closed the fridge and stepped toward the back door, drawn by something I couldn't name. Outside, the neighborhood lay under a cold winter hush. As I stood there, the porch light from next door flicked on. Mrs. Alvarez, my old neighbor from Cedar Grove, stepped out, wrapped in a shawl, holding a trash bag. Her eyes met mine. She startled slightly, then softened. "Michael? I thought you'd moved in with your son for good." "I'm just visiting," I whispered. "You don't look like a man visiting." Her voice had always been like sanded cedar, smooth. Warm. A little worn in the best way. She walked closer, lowering her voice. "Before Helen passed, she told me something. Said if you ever came by looking lost, I should remind you about the box under your bed." The words hit me like a hand closing around my ribs. "You knew?" She made me promise. Helen, always one step ahead, always watching the angles of life that I never noticed. "I might need that box," I said. Mrs. Alvarez nodded. "Then you know where to find it." I slipped back inside before Ethan or Claire stirred. Upstairs, I lay awake until dawn, listening to the house breathe around me. Each breath, a reminder that I was living inside someone else's staged perfection. And for the first time since I arrived, I wasn't afraid of their world. I was preparing to dismantle it. By late morning, Ethan suggested we take a little drive. He said it gently, with the tone people use when coaxing a child into a car. I played along, forgetful, tender, a little lost. I even asked if we were going to the doctor. Claire touched my arm. Maybe next week, okay? Let's just get you some fresh air. Fresh air. That was exactly what I wanted. Ethan drove us to Cedar Grove, to my old house. The second he unlocked the door, I felt the difference. Homes have spirits. This one breathed with memory wood dust, lemon oil, the faint echo of Helen's laughter woven into the floorboards. I stepped inside slowly, like a man returning to himself. This place needs work, Ethan muttered, glancing around. Market's hot, Dad. We could sell it fast. Could. Not would. He didn't know yet. But I did. I wandered toward the bedroom Helen and I once shared. Ethan lingered in the hallway, as if bored by nostalgia. Good. I needed boredom. It kept his eyes elsewhere. I knelt beside the bed, my joints screaming, and reached under the frame. Dust. Cobwebs. And then my fingertips brushed cold tin. The box. Helen's box. I pulled it into the light, the metal catching faint glimmers of morning sun. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid, expecting recipes, handwritten notes, soft memories. But what sat beneath the top layer made my heart stop, not in fear, but in recognition. Helen hadn't been leaving memories. She had been leaving instructions. The tin box sat on my lap like a living thing. Not heavy, just significant. The way certain objects carry years inside them. I lifted the top layer of recipe cards, ginger cookies, beef stew, Helen's strawberry jam written in her looping script, and beneath them, the truth waited. A manila folder, thick and sharp at the edges. I opened it carefully, aware of Ethan pacing somewhere in the hallway, checking his phone, waiting for the moment he could shepherd me back to the car like a docile old man. The first page was dense legal text. But even before my eyes tracked the words, my body already knew what it meant. A tremor moved through me. Recognition. Grief. A kind of awe. The Helen Carter Legacy Trust. Irrevocable. Effective 5 years earlier. My breath hitched. 5 years. Right after her first diagnosis. She had known. She had looked further ahead than I ever dared to. Helen always had a way of watching the horizon while I focused on the wood grain in front of me. My eyes followed the key passage. Upon the grantor's passing, the property located at 19 Willow Bend shall transfer to the Cedar Grove Community Housing Collective for development into accessible homes for local seniors and families in need. Not to Ethan. Not to me. To the community. Helen's handwriting sat at the bottom. A signature I'd traced with my thumb 1,000 times on birthday cards, mortgage renewals, permission slips for school trips. Her name looked steady, confident, prepared. I sat there for a long moment, letting the truth settle. She hadn't abandoned Ethan. She had protected him from himself, from the world he was trying so desperately to impress. I whispered into the quiet room. You always knew, didn't you, Helen? The floorboard creaked behind me. Dad? Ethan's voice. You okay? I wiped my face before turning. Just remembering your mom. He softened at that genuine for half a second, then tense again as he glanced at his buzzing phone. Anxiety flickered across his features. Titan Holdings. Victor Shaw. The walls of his new life pressing in. A sinking ship always creaks before it disappears. We should go, he said. Lots to finalize today. Of course, I murmured, closing the tin box. We'll finish everything soon. He smiled, relieved. Triumphant because he believed he'd broken me down enough to accept his plan. But I'd found Helen's truth. And the truth is the sharpest tool a man can hold. The next morning, the stage was set. Ethan insisted we meet with the advisor at an office downtown. His voice was too light, too cheerful, as if he were heading to a ribbon-cutting ceremony, not walking into a reckoning. Claire dressed sharply in a cream blazer, hair glossed to perfection, makeup thick enough to hide the panic creeping beneath. I want to be there when you sign, she said, squeezing my arm with her polished fingers. For your comfort. Comfort. It was almost funny. They guided me to the glass tower like handlers escorting livestock. The elevator shot us upward, floor after polished floor. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked calm. Old, yes, but not weak. Standing between them, I felt like a man carrying an invisible anchor of truth. The office door swung open to reveal Victor Shaw. He was exactly as I remembered, sleek, cold, handsome, in a blade-like way. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Carter," he said smoothly. "A pleasure." I nodded, feigning frailty. "My memory's not what it used to be, son. Remind me why we're here again?" Ethan rushed to answer. "Just a simple signing, Dad. This will secure your future. Victor's helping us." Helping. Yes. Helping himself to a house he believed was about to become collateral. We all took seats around a monstrous glass table. Documents waited in a neat stack, white, crisp, venomous. Victor tapped them politely. "If you sign here," he said, "our partnership can move forward." Claire beamed. Ethan straightened his tie. I lowered my eyes, and the door opened behind us. Rosa Martinez entered with a stride that cut the room in half. No flourish, no theatrics, just pure authority dressed in a charcoal suit. She placed her briefcase on the table, with a quiet thud. Ethan blanched. Claire froze completely. "Who is?" Victor began. "My lawyer," I interrupted gently. "I hope you don't mind." Silence. Cold. Heavy. Electric. Rosa opened her case and withdrew the manila folder Helen had prepared 5 years earlier. She placed it directly on top of Victor's pristine stack, like a stone landing in a shallow river. "This meeting cannot proceed," she said calmly, "because Mr. Carter cannot sign a property transfer. He is not the legal owner." The words hit the room like a hammer. "What?" Ethan breathed, his face whitening a shade I'd never seen. Rosa slid the trust papers toward him. "This house hasn't belonged to your father since 2019. It was placed in an irrevocable community trust by your mother." What are you talking about?" Ethan stammered. "He lives there, he." His voice cracked like a teenager, defending a lie he hadn't prepared for. Victor leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Is this true?" Rosa didn't blink. "Yes. And I would suggest checking your loan applications. Using a property you do not own as collateral constitutes federal fraud." Victor went still. Perfectly still. The way predators freeze when assessing whether they've been trapped. Claire let out a small squeak, her hands flying to her mouth. Ethan, do something." But Ethan looked like he was drowning in the middle of his own lie. His lips parted, but no sound came out, just a silent collapse. The man who had tried to orchestrate everything could not even muster a defense. Victor stood abruptly. "I don't deal with fraud," he snapped, glaring at Ethan with a disgust so sharp it almost cut the air. "Our arrangement is over. Whatever happens next is on you." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass trembled. Claire broke first. Tears smeared her mascara into jagged rivers. "You lied to me," she sobbed. "You said we were fine." Her voice rose into a raw, breaking wail. "We're ruined, do you hear me? Ruined." Ethan sank into his chair, crushed under the avalanche he had built with his own hands. I watched him, my son, my only child, unravel. And it hurt. It cut deep. But some truths require breaking before rebuilding. Rosa placed a quiet hand on my shoulder. "You're safe now, Michael. Safe." The word tasted like a long winter finally ending. I stood slowly, leaning on my cane, and walked toward Ethan. He couldn't even lift his eyes. I placed a small card on the table in front of him. The contact for the Cedar Grove Housing Collective. The community Helen had trusted. Softly, I said, "Your mother left you a path back to yourself, son. Whether you take it, that's up to you." Outside, the winter sun hit my face like a blessing. The air felt honest again. Justice had landed. And the truth. Helen's truth had saved us all. The elevator doors closed behind us, with a soft metallic sigh. And for the first time in days, my lungs felt like they could take a full breath. Rosa walked beside me in silence. The steady kind, the kind people carry when they know the storm has already broken, and all that's left is rain. Cold, clean, necessary rain. When we stepped into the lobby, sunlight poured through the tall glass windows. The kind of bright winter light that makes everything look honest, whether it wants to be or not. I paused there, cane in hand, watching dust particles float in the beams. Funny thing, those were the same beams Helen loved in our old workshop. She'd stand in the doorframe and say, "Look, Michael, even the dust knows where to shine." I never understood what she meant until today. Outside, the wind sliced across my face, sharp enough to wake every part of me that had gone numb over the past week. People hurried by with cups of coffee and winter scarves wrapped tight. Life moved on, unaware that a chapter of my own had just closed inside that glass tower. Rosa clicked the car open. "You did well today," she said. I shook my head. "I didn't do anything." "Helen did." "No," she corrected gently. "Helen prepared. You acted. Most men your age would have crumbled under the kind of pressure your son put on you." I wanted to argue, to insist I was weaker than she believed, but the truth was resting on my chest, warm, heavy. Maybe strength isn't loud. Maybe it's the quiet decision to stand up even when someone has been trying for days to convince you you can't. We drove back to Cedar Grove without speaking much. The neighborhood came into view like a memory settling back into place. Old brick homes, the grocery store where Helen bought fresh herbs, Mrs. Alvarez, sweeping snow off her porch with the same red broom she'd had for 20 years. It felt like exhaling. Rosa parked in front of my house, our house, and turned to me. "Michael, I need to ask. What do you want to do next?" "About Ethan." "About everything." The question hung in the air like a slow-moving snowfall. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stepped out of the car, boots crunching into the thin layer of ice on the driveway. The wind carried the scent of cedar from the line of old trees behind the fence. I walked to the porch, ran my hand along the railing Ethan and I built together when he was 12. He hammered every third nail crooked. Helen pretended not to notice. The memories pressed close, soft and painful, like bruises that still ache when you move. "I don't want him in prison," I finally said, eyes on the porch rail. "No matter what he did." Rosa nodded as if she already knew. "Then we'll pursue civil protections only. A restraining order, financial boundaries, full documentation. He won't be able to touch a single thing that's yours." "And Claire?" I asked. "She'll leave him," Rosa said plainly. "But that's not your burden." No, it wasn't. But family wounds don't respect boundaries. They seep through. I pushed open the front door. The familiar scent of lemon polish wrapped around me like a shawl. Helen's music box still sat on the shelf, waiting to be wound. I turned the small brass key until it clicked, and the melody began a tune she hummed during long summer evenings, the one Ethan used to fall asleep to. I sat at the kitchen table. Rosa placed the trust papers in front of me so I could review them one last time. "Your wife was remarkable," she said quietly. "She was," I whispered. "More than I ever deserved." My eyes lingered on Helen's signature. Steady, intentional, final. Rosa stood to leave. "You call me if he comes near you. Any hour. Any day." "I will." "And Michael?" "Yes?" Her gaze softened. "You're not alone." After she left, the house felt full, not empty. As if Helen had stepped out of the next room to fetch something, and would return any minute. I let the feeling stay a while. I needed it. Hours passed. The sun dipped behind the cedar trees. Shadows stretched across the living room rug. I boiled water for tea the way Helen liked it, 2 minutes steeping. Nothing bitter. I carried the cup to the window and watched the streetlights blink awake. Then, a car slowed outside. Ethan. He stepped out slowly, shoulders slumped, hands shaking. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the world had wrung him out and left him with nothing but bones and regret. He walked halfway up the path before stopping. "Dad," he called softly. I didn't open the door. I didn't need to. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I don't know who I am anymore." I closed my eyes. The ache in my chest pulsed familiar, human, real. I wasn't ready to let him in, but I wasn't ready to cut him out. "Go home, Ethan," I said through the door. "Get help. Get honest. Then we'll talk." Silence. Then, footsteps retreating. Then the car starting. A small mercy. A small boundary. Both necessary. When he was gone, I sat back down at the table, opened Helen's recipe box, and placed the trust papers inside, as if tucking them under her protection once more. The night settled around the house, quiet but full. My heartbeat slowed. My breathing eased. For the first time since Helen's passing, I felt anchored again. Everything that mattered was safe. Everything that was false had fallen away. As I sat there with the warm cup between my hands, I thought about the truth of family, the fragile, breakable truth. And I realized something I hadn't been able to before. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to let betrayal define the rest of your life. Sometimes, justice isn't about punishment. It's about protection. About choosing dignity when someone tries to take it from you. So tell me, would you forgive them? Or would you choose justice? If this story found you today, don't leave quietly. Tell me from which city, which corner of Canada, or the world you're listening. And subscribe for the next true Canadian family story on Fractured Vengeance.